This story is titled, My Wife Was Shocked When I Invited Her Lover's Wife to a Backyard Party. My revenge was brutal. Everyone was shocked. Hi, everyone. Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and makes sure you never miss out on amazing videos. All right, let's get started. What's up, everyone? So, I thought I had my life all figured out. You know, married for 5 years to Harper, the love of my life, or so I thought. We were the couple everyone admired. Every holiday card was a Pinterest-worthy masterpiece. We'd argue over who got the bigger slice of pie at Thanksgiving and laugh about it later. Pretty normal stuff, but apparently I missed the memo about how happily ever after isn't in the cards when your wife is sneaking around with some dude named Travis. Let me paint the picture. It's a Saturday morning, a perfect fall day, the kind where the leaves crunch just right under your boots and the air smells like fresh-cut grass. I'd just finished mowing the lawn and came inside, feeling accomplished. Harper's on the couch, laughing at her phone like she just found the funniest meme ever. At first, I didn't think much of it. Harper's always been chatty and glued to her phone, but then I noticed something different. She's not sharing the meme with me. Normally, she'd shove the phone in my face like, "Babe, you gotta see this." Not this time. Instead, I get the silent treatment while she's giggling like a teenager. Whatever, I brush it off. Relationships are all about trust, right? But then, little things start adding up, like how her phone is suddenly glued to her side. She's taking it to the bathroom like it's a lifeline. Then there are these mysterious late nights at work. Lots of them. I didn't even question it at first because, hey, Harper's in marketing, and sometimes campaigns need extra hours. But now I'm wondering, were those big projects actually PowerPoint presentations, or were they just code for that dude? Sure, here's the longer version. And it wasn't just the phone. There was this shift in Harper. At first it was subtle, almost like the kind of change you wouldn't notice unless you were paying close attention. But I was paying attention. She'd laugh at my jokes, but it felt hollow, like she was going through the motions. You know when someone smiles, but it doesn't quite reach their eyes? That was her. The warmth, the spark. It was fading. I chalked it up to stress or work or anything but what it really was. Like an idiot, I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe I was imagining things. But those little changes started adding up. Harper, who used to toss her phone on the couch or leave it charging anywhere, now had it glued to her hand. She'd always been pretty open about everything. Texts, emails, even her weird Pinterest boards. But now it was like Fort Knox. The phone was either in her pocket, face down, or locked away. She started being vague about her schedule too. Meetings ran longer, late-night work sessions became more frequent, and her stories didn't always add up. I'd ask her about her day, and the answers were clipped, rushed, like she just wanted me to stop asking. And then came the day, the one where everything changed. It was a Saturday afternoon. Harper had gone upstairs to shower, and her phone was charging on the kitchen counter. I don't know why, but seeing it sitting there felt weird, like it didn't belong. I stood there, staring at it. Should I? Shouldn't I? I mean, snooping isn't exactly the hallmark of a healthy relationship, but when the person you trust starts acting shady, that trust starts to crack. And once it cracks, all you want is to patch it up, or at least figure out where it's leaking. So, yeah, I grabbed the phone. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. I told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just needed peace of mind, right? Just a quick check to prove to myself I was being paranoid. A small peek, no harm done. Big mistake. The first thing I see is a text thread with someone named Travis. Travis? I didn't know a Travis. I clicked on it, and there they were. Messages I never should have seen. They weren't just casual. They were flirty, playful, intimate, inside jokes I didn't get, references to things I knew nothing about. And then I read, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." Last night? Amazing? My head was spinning. I scrolled up and it got worse. Photos. Selfies of the two of them in what was very obviously a hotel room. Her head on his shoulder. His arm around her waist. Both of them grinning like they are married. Like I didn't exist. I felt absolutely disgusted. Harper wasn't just working late. She wasn't tired or stressed or distant because of life. She was distant because she was busy. Busy sneaking around behind my back with Travis. I froze. My hands were still gripping the phone, but I couldn't move. My brain just stopped. You know how people say time slows down in moments like this? It's true. Those 10 seconds felt like 10 minutes. My entire world shifted and everything started making sense in the worst possible way. And then I heard the water upstairs shutting off. I slammed the phone back down on the counter, trying to make it look untouched. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she might hear it from the bathroom. I couldn't let her see me like this. I couldn't let her know I knew. So I did the only thing I could think of. I walked back to the living room and sat down in my chair, trying to look as casual as possible, like nothing had happened, like my entire world hadn't just imploded. I grabbed the remote and stared at the TV, not even registering what was on. She walked into the room and gave me a quick smile before heading towards the kitchen. And I just sat there, pretending everything was fine. But inside, I was unraveling. I didn't confront her that day. No way. I wasn't about to storm and demanding answers. That's not my style. Plus, I already knew how that conversation would go. She'd deny it. She'd gaslight me. She'd twist it until I was the one apologizing. I needed more than just a gut feeling. I needed to play this smart. That night, I barely slept. Harper was next to me. I kept replaying the last few months. Every late night, every awkward excuse, every weird moment where she seemed distracted. It all made sense now. I wasn't even angry yet. That part came later. At that moment, I just felt stupid. Like, how did I miss this? How long had she been pulling this off? And who the hell was Travis, really? The next morning, I woke up early, determined to figure this out. While Harper was still asleep, I got out my laptop and went full FBI mode. It didn't take long to find him. A quick scroll through Harper's Instagram and some tagged photos from her work events confirmed it. Travis was one of her co-workers, of course. But Travis wasn't just some random dude. He was married to a woman named Sierra, and they had 2 kids. That little detail added a whole new level of betrayal. It wasn't just my life Harper was blowing up. It was Sierra's too. And those poor kids? They didn't deserve this. I sat there staring at Travis's grinning family photos on Facebook, wondering how many lies he'd told to keep up this double life. Did Sierra have any idea? Was she sitting at home, baking cookies for PTA meetings, while her husband was out here playing house with my wife? I thought about reaching out to Sierra right then and there, but something told me to hold off. If I was going to blow this thing wide open, I needed to do it right. I wasn't about to let Harper or Travis weasel their way out of this. That day, I decided I wasn't just going to sit back and let this betrayal crush me. I wasn't going to play the heartbroken victim while Harper and Travis got away with their little affair. No, I was going to make them regret it. I just needed a plan. And trust me, I wasn't going to wing it. This wasn't the kind of thing you go into half prepared, especially when you're up against 2 people who've been scheming behind your back for months. Harper and Travis had the upper hand for a while, but that was about to change. I was done being the clueless husband after the shook settled. I needed to take action, a big one, but I realized that I couldn't do this alone, not entirely at least. Sierra, Travis's wife, was a crucial piece of this puzzle. If I wanted to confront Harper and Travis without giving them the chance to lie their way out, Sierra needed to be in the loop. But how do you casually reach out to someone and tell them their spouse has been cheating? I couldn't exactly send her a text saying, "Hey, I think your husband is sleeping with my wife. Thoughts?" So, I kid you not, I got creative. I figured a neutral setting would be best. Something non-threatening, something neighborly. That's when the idea of a backyard barbecue popped into my head. We'd hosted plenty of them before, and Harper loved them. She'd help me plan, invite her coworkers, including Travis, and have no idea that she was walking right into her own downfall. Sounded perfect. I didn't waste time. The very next morning, I sent Sierra a Facebook message. It was polite, maybe even a little too friendly. I introduced myself as Harper's husband and mentioned that we were throwing a casual barbecue for some neighbors and work friends. I made sure to name drop a few of Harper's co-workers so it didn't seem weird. Then I added, "We'd love for you and Travis to join us. It'll be great to get to know some new faces." To my surprise, Sierra replied within an hour. She thanked me for the invite, said she'd check with Travis, and even mentioned how nice it was to meet someone making an effort to build community. Ouch. The irony of her words hit me like a truck. Meanwhile, Harper was completely clueless. She was thrilled about the barbecue idea, offering to help with decorations and food. She even suggested inviting some of her favorite coworkers, Travis included. That moment was pure gold. The person who was actively wrecking our marriage was suggesting I include her partner in crime at a social gathering in our own backyard. You can't make this stuff up. For the next few days, I played the role of the perfect husband. I let Harper think everything was fine while I meticulously planned every detail. The guest list was small but strategic. Neighbors, a few friends, and key people from Harper's workplace. I made sure to exclude anyone who might tip her off about what was coming. The hardest part was keeping my cool. Every time Harper talked about the barbecue, I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from saying something snarky, like when she said, "Travis and Sierra are such a cute couple. I'm glad they're coming." Cute couple? Give me a break. But I stayed calm because I knew the payoff would be worth it. By the end of the week, everything was in place. I'd prepped the yard, borrowed a massive grill from a neighbor, and made sure the seating arrangements would force Harper and Travis to interact with Sierra and me. Timing was everything. If this was going to work, I needed to make sure everyone was comfortable and relaxed before I dropped the bomb. The day before the barbecue, Sierra messaged me again to confirm they'd be coming. She even asked if there was anything she could bring, which almost made me feel bad for her. She was so nice, so unsuspecting. I hated that she was going to find out about Travis's betrayal in such a public way, but I couldn't think of a better option. I needed her there, and I needed her to see the truth with her own eyes. That night, Harper and I sat on the couch planning the menu. She suggested burgers, hot dogs, and a couple of side dishes. It was like any other night, except for the fact that I was silently seething every time she smiled. How could she sit there, acting like everything was normal when she was sneaking around behind my back? The next morning, I woke up early, double-checking everything. The yard looked great. String lights overhead, tables set up with simple centerpieces, and a cooler full of drinks. It was the perfect suburban setup. Harper even commented on how nice and cozy everything looked, if only she knew what was coming. As the guests started arriving, I shifted into host mode. I greeted everyone with a smile and made small talk about the weather and football. Harper floated around the yard, laughing and chatting like the life of the party, but I could see the cracks. Every time I mentioned Travis's name, her smile faltered just a little, and then they showed up. Sierra and Travis walked in together, holding hands and looking every bit the happy couple. I caught Harper stealing a glance at Travis as he walked in from across the yard. Her eyes lingered just a moment too long before darting away. I swear she looked like she was trying to telepathically send him a message. Stay cool. Stay cool, my ass. Sierra was warm and friendly, immediately complimenting the setup and mingling with the neighbors. Travis, on the other hand, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. His eyes darted around nervously, intentionally avoiding Harper altogether. I welcomed them both with a grin, shaking Travis's hand firmly and giving Sierra a warm nod. Harper was mid-conversation with one of our neighbors when she spotted them. Her face froze for the briefest moment before she plastered on her best fake smile and waved. Travis! Sierra! So glad you could make it, she said, her voice just a little too high-pitched. Watching her squirm was almost satisfying. As the afternoon wore on, I made sure to steer conversations in a way that would put Harper and Travis on edge. I chatted with Sierra, asking her about her kids and how she and Travis managed to balance work and family life. She seemed genuinely happy to talk, completely unaware of the storm brewing around her. Meanwhile, Harper kept glancing at me, probably wondering what I was up to. I could tell she wanted to pull me aside and ask why I'd invited Travis and Sierra, but she didn't dare make a scene. Until now, everything was falling into place. The stage was set. The only thing left was to deliver the final blow. But timing was everything. I wasn't about to rush it and miss the perfect moment. This wasn't just about exposing the affair. It was about making them feel the weight of their betrayal in front of the very people who thought they were the epitome of decent, trustworthy individuals. At one point, Harper cornered me near the grill. Everything okay? She asked, her tone overly casual. Why wouldn't it be? I replied with a shrug, flipping a burger. I don't know, she said, her smile forced. You just seem different. I looked at her, letting the silence hang for a beat too long. Just focused on making this barbecue perfect, I said with a smirk. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't push it. Good. Let her stew. Dinner was served, and I strategically placed Sierra and Travis at a table near the center of the yard. Harper ended up at the same table naturally, which meant I got to watch the three of them navigate one of the most awkward dinners of their lives. Sierra, ever the optimist, tried to keep the conversation light, asking Harper about work. Oh, it's been so busy lately, Harper said, her voice strained. Big projects, you know how it is. I nearly choked on my burger. Big projects? That's what she was calling it? I kept my expression neutral, though. No need to give myself away just yet. Travis barely said a word, and every time Sierra tried to pull him into the conversation, he muttered something vague and took another bite of food. Harper looked like she was clinging to the edge of a cliff, smiling and nodding like her life depended on it. The neighbors, oblivious to the brewing storm, chatted happily about weekend plans and the latest neighborhood gossip. It was almost surreal, sitting there, knowing what I knew, while everyone else carried on like nothing was wrong. After dinner, I decided it was time to start planting seeds. I walked over to the dessert table, where Sierra was helping herself to a slice of pie. So, Sierra, I said, keeping my tone friendly, Travis must be busy at work, huh? Harper's always mentioning how late he's been staying to finish those projects. Sierra looked up, her smile faltering slightly. Yeah, he's been working a lot, she said, glancing over at Travis. Sometimes I barely see him during the week. Must be tough, I said, nodding sympathetically. Harper's been putting in a lot of late nights too, They make quite the team, don't they? She smiled politely, but I could see the faintest flicker of doubt in her eyes. Across the yard, Harper was watching us. Her body was stiff, her hand gripping her drink like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I gave her a small wave, and she quickly looked away. As the evening wore on, the tension became almost unbearable. Harper and Travis were clearly on edge, and even Sierra seemed to pick up on something being off. She kept glancing at Travis, her brows furrowing slightly, like she was piecing together a puzzle that didn't quite make sense yet. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the string lights began to twinkle, I decided it was time. I stood up, clinking my glass to get everyone's attention. The chatter died down as the guests turned to look at me. "Hey everyone," I began, my voice calm and steady. "I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for coming tonight. It's not often we get to bring everyone together like this, and I think it's important to celebrate community and friendship." I paused, letting my gaze sweep over the crowd before landing on Harper. And of course, a big thank you to Harper for helping me put this together. She's been working so hard lately, both at home and at work. It's really inspiring. Harper's face turned a shade paler, and her smile wavered. "And speaking of work," I continued, turning to Travis and Sierra, "it's been great getting to know more of Harper's coworkers. Travis, I've heard so much about you. Harper's always talking about how dedicated and hardworking you are." Travis shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting to Harper, then back to me. "But you know," I said, my tone sharpening slightly, "it's not just about work, it's about trust." I stressed on the word trust and continued, "About being honest with the people who matter most." The silence was deafening. I locked eyes with Harper, my voice cutting through the chatter like a blade. "Harper," I said, slow and deliberate, "would you like to go ahead and tell everyone here about your secret late-night meetings with Travis? Or should I lay it all out for you?" The gasps from the crowd were almost satisfying. Harper's chair scraped against the concrete as she stood up, her face flushed with panic. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. "This isn't the time or place for whatever this is." Sierra turned to Travis, her confusion morphing into alarm. "Travis, what's he talking about?" Travis opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked like he wanted to vanish into thin air. I smiled, the calmest I'd felt in weeks. "I'm talking about the affair, the texts, the hotel meetups, everything." Sierra's face crumpled as the realization hit her. "Travis?" she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. The yard erupted into murmurs and gasps. Harper and Travis looked like deer caught in headlights, and Sierra's devastation was written all over her face. I stepped back, letting the chaos unfold. My job was done, or so I thought. But as the yard descended into chaos, it became clear that the fallout was far from over. Harper stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Travis looked like someone had just told him his car was on fire. And Sierra, poor Sierra, was staring at her husband with a mix of heartbreak and fury that could melt steel. The murmurs among the guests grew louder. Neighbors exchanged wide-eyed glances, some whispering, others openly gawking. Nobody was leaving, though. Oh no, they weren't going to miss the live drama. Harper finally found her voice. "James, can we please talk about this privately?" she begged, her tone wavering between desperation and anger. "This isn't the right place." I let out a bitter laugh. "Not the right place? That's rich coming from you. Was the hotel room the right place, Harper? Or was that just convenient?" More gasps from the crowd. One of the neighbors muttered, "Oh, damn," under his breath. Harper's face turned red, either from embarrassment or fury. I couldn't tell, and honestly, I didn't care. Sierra, meanwhile, rounded on Travis. "Is it true?" she demanded. "You're sleeping with her? After everything? After all we've been through?" Travis looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. "Sierra, It's not what you think," he stammered, his hands raised defensively. "Oh, don't you dare!" Sierra yelled, cutting him off. "Don't you dare try to gaslight me right now. I'm not stupid, Travis. He has proof. Do you hear me?" "Proof?" I nodded, pulling my phone from my pocket. "Would anyone like to see the texts? Or the pictures?" I offered, holding it up. "Because trust me, I've got plenty." That shut everyone up. Harper's eyes darted to my phone, then to the crowd. "James, please," she said, her voice trembling. "Don't do this. We can fix this. I can fix this." I scoffed, my voice cold and sharp. "You didn't just break our marriage. You destroyed it. You crossed every line and left nothing behind to salvage." The crowd's attention shifted back to Sierra and Travis as Sierra's anger boiled over. "You're disgusting," she spat at him, her voice shaking. "I trusted you. I built a life with you. You have kids? And this is what you do? And with whom? With her. She gestured toward Harper disgustingly like she's a piece of trash, who flinched like she'd been slapped. Travis reached for Sierra's arm, but she yanked it away. "Don't touch me," she hissed. "Don't you dare touch me!" Harper, desperate to shift the blame, turned to me. "James, you don't understand," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I was lonely. You've been so distant lately. I made a mistake, okay? A horrible mistake. But you have to take some responsibility for this." "Responsibility?" I shot back, incredulous. "You think this is my fault? That's a hell of a stretch, Harper, even for you." "You stopped caring," she continued, her voice rising. "You barely looked at me anymore. What was I supposed to do?" "Not cheat, for starters," I snapped. That would have been nice. The neighbors, who had been murmuring quietly, now seemed to divide into two camps. Those who were horrified by the spectacle and those who were clearly loving every second of it. One woman whispered something to her husband, who nodded grimly. Another couple exchanged awkward glances before quietly slipping out the gate. But most of them stayed, too curious or too entertained, to leave. Sierra turned her attention back to me, shaking. "How long?" she asked. "How long has this been going on?" "About 6 months," I said flatly, holding her gaze. "Maybe longer. I found the texts a few weeks ago. Dates, times. They match up with all those late nights Harper's been working." Sierra's face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might collapse. 6 months, she whispered, as if saying it out loud made it more real. Then her expression hardened. She turned to Travis and said, "We're done. Do you hear me? Done." Travis didn't even try to argue. He just stood there, his shoulders slumped in defeat as Sierra stormed toward the gate. "Wait!" Harper called after her. But Sierra didn't even turn around. She pushed the gate open, slamming it shut behind her with a force that made everyone wince. The sound echoed through the yard like a gunshot. Travis hesitated, looking from Harper to the gate. I should go after her," he mumbled. But he didn't move. "Yeah, you should," I said, laughing. "But don't expect her to take you back. If she's smart, she won't." Travis glared at me for a moment before turning and walking out of the yard. The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes were on Harper now, who looked small and defeated, standing alone in the middle of the chaos she'd created. The neighbors began to disperse, one by one. A few offered me awkward pats on the back or mumbled words of sympathy as they left. No one said a word to Harper. By the time the yard was empty, it was just the two of us. Harper stood by the table, her arms wrapped around herself. "James," she whispered, "please, I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "But it did," I said, my tone flat. "And now you have to live with it." She stepped closer, tears streaming down her face. "I'll do anything," she said, her voice breaking. "Therapy, counseling, whatever you want. Just don't give up on us, please." I stared at her for a long moment, my emotions swirling like a storm. Anger, betrayal, sadness. All of it threatened to overwhelm me, but there was no going back. Harper shattered all the trust I had for her. She was my wife, and I was committed to her only for her to go with a jerk like Travis. I couldn't forgive her for it. "There's nothing left to save," I said quietly. "You destroyed it." Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't waver. I turned and walked inside, leaving her standing there in the dark. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of clarity. It wasn't closure, not yet, but it was a start. The fallout, though, was anything but clean. If you've ever seen a perfectly controlled demolition where a building collapses neatly into its own footprint, this was the opposite. It was messy, unpredictable, and left wreckage everywhere. Harper might have been the epicenter, but the shockwaves reached everyone around us. That night, after I left her in the backyard, Harper stayed out there for hours. I could hear her pacing back and forth on the deck, her muffled sobs cutting through the otherwise quiet night. I didn't care. I locked myself in the guest room, trying to piece together how we'd gotten here. It wasn't like I was blindsided anymore, but seeing it all play out so publicly made it hit differently. The next morning, Harper was gone by the time I woke up. She left a note on the kitchen counter that said, "We need to talk. Call me when you're ready." I crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash. But the day didn't end there. Word spread fast, faster than I expected. Of course, when you publicly expose an affair at a barbecue, it doesn't stay a secret for long. By lunchtime, half the neighborhood knew, and by the evening, the other half did too. I started getting texts and calls from friends, family, and even some of Harper's co-workers who had been at the barbecue. Most of them had the same tone: shock, disbelief, and a sprinkling of awkward condolences. "Hey man, just heard what happened. That's rough. You okay?" I never would have thought Harper would do something like that. "You need anything? You're handling this better than I would. Stay strong." The most satisfying part is a message from one of Harper's co-workers who hadn't been at the barbecue. "Travis is screwed. HR got wind of what happened. Pretty sure he's about to get canned. Good. As for Harper, she didn't come back that day. Or the next. She must have gone to a friend's place or a hotel, because I didn't hear a peep from her except for one text asking if she could come by to grab some things. I ignored it. Instead, I focused on cleaning up the mess. Literally and figuratively. The yard still had remnants of the barbecue. I cleaned it all up, one piece at a time, like I was scrubbing Harper's betrayal out of my life. By the end of the week, the lawyers were involved. Harper and I didn't even argue about the divorce. It was like she knew she had no ground to stand on. She'd stop by when I wasn't home to pack up her things, leaving little notes behind asking if we could talk things through. I never responded. Then there was Sierra. She was the wild card in all this. I didn't expect to hear from her again, but a week after the barbecue, she called me. I just needed to hear from someone who understands, she said, her voice strong. I'm so angry, but I also feel like I can't stop crying. It's like my life isn't my own anymore. I get it, I told her. And I did. We talked for over an hour, swapping stories and piecing together timelines. It was surreal, bonding with the person whose life had been destroyed alongside mine. But it helped. Sierra wasn't wasting any time, though. She'd already filed for divorce and had moved back to her parents' house with the kids. I'm not sticking around to see if Travis can redeem himself, she said. He made his bed, and now he can rot in it. Hearing her resolve made me feel lighter in a way. If she could move forward, so could I. But it didn't stop with Harper and Travis. Our mutual friends started taking sides, which was somehow both expected and incredibly frustrating. Some people reached out to me, apologizing for Harper's behavior and offering their support. Others, though, clearly felt torn. She made a mistake, one mutual friend told me, as if 6 months of sneaking around was a mistake and not a calculated series of choices. Don't you think you should at least hear her out? No, I said flatly. I don't. That seemed to be the end of that friendship. Harper's reputation took a nosedive, too. She tried to spin the story in her favor, claiming I was distant and emotionally unavailable, but it didn't stick. People knew me well enough to see through the lies. Besides, the evidence was too damning to ignore. Texts, photos, hotel receipts. She didn't stand a chance. One of the neighbors even confronted me at the mailbox a couple of weeks later. James, I had no idea she was like that, he said, shaking his head. My wife's been telling me to stop hanging out with Travis at the gym. She says his kind of energy is contagious. I almost laughed. Smart woman, I replied. But consequences wasn't just social. It honestly touched my professional life too. At first, the stress threatened to creep in, but instead of letting it pull me under, I used it as fuel. My focus sharpened like never before. I poured my energy into my work, not to prove anything to Harper, but to prove to myself that I wasn't going to let her mess derail me. When my boss pulled me aside, it wasn't to call out slipping performance. It was to commend me for stepping up. I'd been gunning for a new opportunity anyway, so I started quietly putting out feelers, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. By the time interviews rolled in, I was already moving on to bigger and better things. While Harper was busy trying to spin her version of events, I was leveling up. A fresh start wasn't just an idea anymore. It was already in motion. Life slowly started to stabilize after that. The house felt emptier without Harper's stuff, but it also felt better, cleaner, like I could finally breathe without her lies suffocating me. I started focusing on myself. Sierra and I stayed in touch, mostly through texts and the occasional phone call. We didn't lean on each other too much. It was more like we were checking in, making sure the other person was still standing. She even sent me a photo of her kids playing in the backyard of her parents' house. They're going to be okay, she wrote. And so am I. I was happy for her. As for Harper, she faded into the background. I'd hear bits and pieces through mutual friends, how she was living in a tiny apartment across town, how she was trying to rebuild her life, whatever that meant. She reached out a couple more times, asking if we could talk, but I never replied. The last I heard, Travis had lost his job. Sierra told me he tried to get her to take him back, but she slammed that door shut. Good for her. By the time the divorce was finalized, I felt like a new person. Turns out divorce is not a so bad idea. The bitterness was still there, but it wasn't consuming me anymore. It was just a reminder. A scar to remind me to pay attention next time. One night, I sat out on the back porch, looking at the yard where everything had gone down. The string lights were still there, though I hadn't turned them on since the barbecue. It felt like a lifetime ago. I didn't feel triumphant or vindicated, just free. Free from the lies, the betrayal, and the weight of trying to fix something that was never going to be whole again. The fallout had been brutal, but in a strange way, it was exactly what I needed to start over. And yeah, that's my story. If you think I overreacted, I respect your opinion. but it only meant reclaiming my right of being cheated on like any respectable man would. The only difference is that I did it in my style.